Welcome to Daily Dharma Listening, a sanctuary of stories and reflections where ancient Buddhist wisdom meets the heartbeat of our modern world. If your soul seeks calm in the chaos, truth in the noise, or simply a quiet space to breathe and listen, you are exactly where you are meant to be. This journey begins with a single breath and unfolds like a lotus blooming in the early morning fog. If this message resonates with your spirit, consider subscribing, liking, or sharing this video with someone you care about. Let us walk together, slowly, tenderly, toward the inner silence that remembers all things. There is a space that exists between two thoughts. It is not long, it is not wide, but it is deep. And in that stillness, the whole of reality waits. Before the next notification, before the next worry about tomorrow, before the next memory of yesterday, there is that sliver of space. A silence that is not empty but full. A quietness that does not lack sound, but listens to everything. The Buddha once pointed not to heaven, not to miracles, but to this very mind, this ordinary, flickering, distracted mind, and said, "This is it. This is where the path begins." Today, we forget, again and again. We forget to be here. We forget to breathe with awareness. We forget to live without fear. We race through our days, checking boxes, crossing bridges, sending messages, but underneath it all, we are searching for something we can never quite name. Something steady, something whole, something real. The Buddhist teachings do not promise you that life will become easy. They do not promise you that the world will stop spinning or that your mind will stop wandering. But they do promise this, that within the very conditions of your suffering lies the seed of awakening. Imagine this. A man stands beside a quiet river at dawn. The mist is rising. The birds are just beginning their song. He does not speak. He does not move. He simply stands there, watching the light change on the surface of the water. There is no lesson. There is no quote. But in that moment, he is free. He is not replaying the conversation from the night before. He is not planning how to fix the future. He is simply breathing, aware. That is the entry point to everything the Buddha ever taught. To find peace in chaos is not to run from the world, but to stop fleeing from yourself. You may feel lost, but in Buddhism, that lostness is the path itself. When you pause, when you stop running, when you just sit with your uncertainty, it becomes a door, a Dharma gate. And the moment you stop trying to fix or improve the moment itself becomes sacred. The lotus does not bloom despite the mud. It blooms because of it. So too, the difficulties in your life are not interruptions to your peace. They are the curriculum of awakening. Think of this. You are holding a cup of tea. Someone bumps your arm. The tea spills. Why did the tea spill? Most of us would say, because someone bumped me. But a Buddhist reflection would say, the tea spilled because there was tea in the cup. Whatever is inside you will come out when life shakes you. If anger is inside, anger spills. If fear is inside, fear spills. If presence is inside, then when you are bumped, presence overflows. This is why the practice is not to change the world, but to transform your mind, to fill your cup with compassion, with awareness, with patience. The world will bump you, but what spills is yours to cultivate. Now, let us walk into another scene. A woman sits in traffic. The sky is grey. Her phone buzzes. The car behind her honks. and a child in the back seat begins to cry. This is not a monastery. There are no chanting monks, no incense, no ancient texts. But this, too, is a perfect place for practice. She remembers a line she once read, "Protect your energy." And so she exhales, slowly, not because she is calm, but because she is learning how to stay calm. This is Buddhism for beginners and for the lifelong practitioner. Because in the beginner's mind, there is space. Space to see clearly. Space to respond, not react. Space to choose peace, even when the world offers none. This is what the Buddha meant when he taught. Just as a solid rock is not shaken by the wind, so the wise are not shaken by praise or blame. That woman in traffic, she is the rock. You, listening now, you can be, too. You are not your mood. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that watches them rise and fall, like waves on a vast ocean. When the storm inside you rages, remember, it is not personal. It is not permanent. It is not perfect. But it is practice. Let it be your temple. There are Buddhist reminders for when you feel lost. Here is one. In the scenery of spring, nothing is better, nothing worse. The flowering branches grow naturally, some long, some short. Not everything needs fixing. Not every emotion is a problem. You are not broken. You are simply a garden still learning when to bloom. To live without fear is not to never feel afraid. It is to recognize fear and bow to it like a teacher. It is to understand that fear is just another thought. It does not define you. It visits. It leaves. And still, the breath continues. You continue. So tonight, or this morning, or whenever you find yourself listening to these words, know this: you do not need to change your life to find peace. You need only to begin noticing the life you already have. The way the light touches your skin, the sound of the wind beyond your window, the pause between two thoughts. That is where the treasure is. That is where the practice begins. There is no need to become a monk or escape to a forest. The forest lives within you. When you choose mindfulness in the middle of noise, you are already walking the path. When you offer kindness instead of complaint, you are already living the teachings. When you choose not to retaliate, when you smile at a stranger, when you breathe before speaking, you are already embodying Buddhist wisdom. The Dharma does not ask for perfection. It asks for sincerity. It asks that we begin. Begin with this moment. Begin again with the next. Let each breath be a return. Let each silence be a sanctuary. Let each thought remind you, you are not your thoughts. You are the one who sees. And the one who sees is free. Thank you for beginning this journey with daily Dharma listening. If these reflections spoke to your heart, if they stirred something quiet but undeniable within you, we invite you to subscribe to the channel, like the video, or share it with someone who may need this gentle reminder. This is only the beginning. Part 2, the mirror of the mind. In a quiet forest, far from the noise of cities and the tangled complexities of modern life, there once sat an old monk by a stream. He had no possessions of value, no titles before his name, no desire for fame or praise. He simply lived, one breath at a time, one step at a time. His eyes were gentle, like water that had seen many seasons, and his presence was like a stone resting at the bottom of a river, undisturbed, unmoved. When visitors came to him with their troubles, their restless minds and aching hearts, he did not offer them many words. He would lead them to the stream, point to the water's surface and ask, "What do you see?" Invariably, they would reply, "I see myself." He would smile, place a hand on their shoulder, and say, "Then you are ready to begin." To begin, the path of insight is not to acquire new knowledge, but to remember what was always there, hidden beneath the ripples of thought and desire. The Buddhist teachings invite us not to become someone new, but to return to ourselves, to the mirror of the mind before it was clouded by fear, craving, and illusion. Like the stream, our mind reflects, but when agitated, it distorts. A calm mind, like still water, reveals things as they are. In our daily life, we are constantly pulled away from this clarity. The mind runs toward what it wants and flees from what it fears. It clings, judges, compares, rehearses, and rewinds. The world has taught us to look outward for validation, for meaning, for happiness. But Buddhism for beginners is the art of turning inward, not as an escape, but as a homecoming. To look into the mirror of your own mind is to see both the mud and the moonlight. You will find anger, impatience, insecurity, but also gentleness, courage, compassion. The practice is not to fight what you see, but to see it without judgment, to observe your fear without becoming it, to recognize your anxiety as a passing cloud, not the sky itself. This is the essence of Buddhist lessons for anxiety: to sit with it, breathe with it, and let it move through you like wind through bamboo. Without resistance, consider this moment. Perhaps you are sitting alone, listening to these words as the world continues its endless motion around you. Perhaps there are burdens on your chest, questions in your heart. Pause. Inhale slowly. Exhale fully. Listen to the stillness beneath the sound. You are here. You are alive. And this very breath is the doorway to presence. To find peace in chaos is not to silence the world, but to discover the silence within it. That silence is not absence. It is attention. It is the space that allows everything to be exactly as it is. Like a mirror, it does not cling to the images that pass before it. It simply reflects and lets go. In a monastery in the mountains of Nepal, there was a novice who struggled to meditate. Every morning, he would sit with the others, close his eyes, and immediately be overwhelmed by internal noise. Thoughts of his family, his failures, his hunger, his hopes. He believed he was failing. One morning, frustrated, he approached his teacher. "I cannot meditate," he said. "My mind is too noisy." The teacher replied, "Then meditate on the noise." This is the path, not to seek a quiet mind, but to bring quiet attention to a noisy one. Not to wait for perfect conditions, but to recognize that the mirror is always present, even when covered in dust. To transform your mind is not an act of will, but an act of seeing. When you see clearly, deeply, without distortion, the mind begins to settle on its own. Awareness is like sunlight. It does not fight the darkness. It simply reveals what was hidden. And in that revealing, transformation begins. Modern life offers countless distractions, notifications, deadlines, obligations. But every distraction is also a bell of mindfulness. Every frustration is an invitation. When someone interrupts you, breathe. When plans change, breathe. When your mind spins stories of doubt and regret, breathe again. You do not have to believe every thought. You can observe them, smile at them, and return to the present moment. This is how you protect your energy, not by building walls around your heart, but by becoming so present that negativity cannot stick to you. Like rain on a lotus leaf. It touches you but does not penetrate. You do not need to withdraw from the world. You need only to stop letting the world dictate your peace. There is a profound teaching in the Zen tradition. The obstacle is the path. What you resist, what you avoid, what you fear, it is the very material of awakening. The person who annoys you, the situation you dread, the wound you carry, these are your teachers. Bow to them. Listen to them. Thank them. They polish the mirror. They show you where you are still attached, where you are still asleep, and they remind you that the goal is not perfection, but presence. To live without fear is not a final destination. It is a moment-by-moment returning. Fear will arise, but with mindfulness, it becomes transparent. You see through it. You smile at it. You walk beside it without letting it steer. There is a line from an old Buddhist poem: "When I look deeply into the mirror of my mind, I see not myself, but the 1,000 beings I carry within." Each of us is not a single, fixed identity. We are vast. Inside us are children still afraid, elders full of wisdom, ancestors who prayed in silence, generations of grief and laughter. The mirror reflects it all. But you are not the reflection. You are the mirror. In difficult moments, remember this: you are the sky. The clouds are just weather. Let them pass. Do not cling to passing moods. Do not define yourself by passing roles. You are not your job, your relationships, your history. You are the awareness that watches all of it. This is what it means to wake up. To no longer be asleep in the dream of self. To no longer react from habit, but respond from wisdom. The old monk by the stream knew this. That is why he offered no doctrine, no dogma, no debate, only a mirror. Because once you truly see your own mind, its restlessness, its beauty, its silence, you begin to see the world differently. You become gentler. You listen more. You speak with intention. You suffer less. You need less. You give more. This is the fruit of practice. This is the path walked slowly, breath by breath, with eyes wide open. Let the mirror be your teacher. Part 3. Learning to let go in silence. There is a moment each evening when the world softens, when the light withdraws quietly behind the hills, and the trees stop whispering as though the wind itself has bowed to silence. In that hush, the teachings of the Buddha return without words, like incense rising from an unseen altar. It is in these quiet thresholds of day and night that the soul begins to remember what the noise had made it forget, that freedom is not found in acquiring more, but in letting go. Letting go is not an act of weakness. It is the highest strength. In Buddhist teachings, the act of release is not simply about giving something up. It is about returning to our original nature. The mind before clinging, before fabrication. When we release the grip of attachment, what remains is not emptiness in the sense of void, but emptiness in the sense of openness, like the sky that holds the stars, or the silence that cradles every sound. In the stillness of a cave deep in the Himalayas, a monk once spent 20 years in retreat. When asked how he endured such isolation, he replied, "I gave up the idea that I was ever alone." The silence taught him that most of what we call loneliness is the resistance to being with ourselves. The path of letting go begins not with the external world, but with the stories we've clung to in the corners of our minds. Stories of who we should be, of what others owe us, of what the future must become. These narratives become chains, and each breath of mindfulness is a key. To truly let go is to transform your mind, to stop decorating the prison walls of desire and instead step into the open field of awareness. You may be carrying anger towards someone who left, regret over something you did not say, fear of what may come next. These emotions are not enemies. They are signals, each one asking, "Are you willing to lay this down now?" Not because it is insignificant, but because you are. In the heart of Buddhist wisdom lies the truth of impermanence. Everything changes. Everything passes. Even the heaviest burden, even the sharpest pain, is like a leaf on the surface of a river. It cannot stay. But we try to hold it. We freeze the river. We revisit old wounds and call it healing. But healing begins when we stop rehearsing the pain and start embracing the now. A woman once asked a Zen master how to find peace. He handed her a stone and said, "Carry this for 1 hour, then return it." After an hour, her arm ached. Her fingers were sore. When she finally set the stone down, he asked, "Do you feel lighter?" She nodded. He smiled. "Then learn to put down what does not belong to you." You may believe that your anxiety, your sorrow, your guilt are a part of who you are, but they are weather. They are not the sky. In Buddhist lessons for anxiety, we are taught not to fight these emotions, not to judge them, but to see through them. They arise. They fall. They are not yours to keep. Each morning is a new beginning, not because the sun rises, but because the mind can be renewed. You do not need a new place, a new relationship, a new version of yourself to begin again. You need only a willingness to unclench your heart. To protect your energy is not to build higher walls, but to allow more spaciousness. When you let go, you are no longer trapped inside your own narrative. You are free to respond instead of react, to witness instead of judge. How many times have you replayed the same conversation in your mind, rehearsed the same fear, clutched the same bitterness like a relic? Buddhism invites us to become aware of the moment we reach for these thoughts. And in that moment, to choose silence, the silence that does not suppress, but heals, the silence that does not ignore, but embraces. Letting go is also an act of trust. Trust that what is meant for you cannot be taken. Trust that the path you walk is unfolding precisely as it should. Trust that the pain you feel now is carving space for a greater understanding to arise. To find peace in chaos is to realize that chaos only exists when we resist what is. Peace is the natural state of a mind that does not argue with reality. In a small village nestled between mountains and rice fields, a young boy watched his grandfather, a monk, sit in meditation each dusk. One evening, after a storm had scattered branches across their courtyard, the boy asked, "Why do you always sit so still, even when there is so much to fix?" The old man opened his eyes and said, "Because before I can clear the courtyard, I must clear the storm within me." We are all walking through storms, some visible, some secret, but in every storm, there is a still center, the I, the silence. The practice is to rest there, not in retreat, but in remembrance. The breath becomes our anchor. The moment becomes our refuge. No longer searching for perfection, we simply arrive. You may not realize it, but your willingness to listen, to pause, to reflect is already the path. This moment of stillness is not a break from life. It is life. Each inhale is a return. Each exhale, a surrender. And in that rhythm, we learn to live without fear, not because we are untouched by life, but because we are no longer controlled by it. A man once asked the Buddha, "What have you gained through meditation?" The Buddha replied, "Nothing." Then he smiled and added, "But let me tell you what I have lost: anger, anxiety, depression, insecurity, fear of death. To gain nothing and lose the weight of the world, this is the essence of release." In modern life, we are conditioned to accumulate experiences, possessions, ideas, roles. But the Dharma whispers a different truth. To be truly full, you must be empty, empty of clinging, empty of fixed identity, empty of expectation, not numb, not indifferent, just clear, like a bell that sings only when it is hollow. To live without fear is to walk through your day with your palms open, ready to receive, ready to release. It is not passive. It is powerful. It is the strength of the mountain, silent and unmoved, not because nothing touches it, but because it holds everything without being shaken. When you are overwhelmed, return to the breath. When you are confused, return to the body. When you are lost, return to the silence. And from that place, ask yourself, what am I still carrying that I no longer need? The answer will come not in thought, but in feeling, a loosening, a lightness, a sense of space. And when it does, bow to it, not as a destination reached, but as a door opened, because the path is not a straight road, but a circle that always brings you back here, to this breath, to this silence, to this letting go. In letting go, you do not lose. You remember. And what you remember is this: you are already enough. Part 4. The weight you do not have to carry. There is a kind of heaviness that cannot be seen. It lingers not in the hands, but in the heart, not in the muscles, but in the mind. It is the weight of expectation, of comparison, of old grief, of words left unsaid. It is the invisible burden of being human in a world that rarely pauses, a world that urges us to keep running, keep performing, keep pretending. And yet, the ancient teachings of the Buddha offer a quiet invitation in the midst of all this striving. You can put it down. You can rest in a forest temple where the wind moved freely through the trees and the bells rang softly in the distance. An elder monk would walk the same path every evening, barefoot, slow, present. One evening, a young student approached him and said, "I carry so much inside me: fear, guilt, confusion. How do I become free?" The monk bent down, picked up a heavy rock, and handed it to the boy. "Carry this until morning," he said. The student obeyed. Through the night, his arm ached, his shoulder burned. By dawn, he was exhausted. When he returned, the monk asked, "Why are you tired?" The boy answered, "Because of this rock." The monk smiled. "Then why not set it down?" So many of us go through life holding invisible rocks. We hold on to what someone said 10 years ago. We hold on to who we think we should be by now. We hold on to pain because we believe it is part of us. We carry stories that no longer serve us, wear masks that no longer fit, chase dreams that no longer reflect who we truly are. But the Dharma does not ask us to become something. It asks us to see clearly what we are not. In Buddhism, for beginners, the first steps are often the most misunderstood. It is not about rejecting the world or escaping responsibility. It is about becoming intimate with your inner life, It is about recognizing the mental formations that bind you. Greed, aversion, delusion. These are the architects of our suffering. Not the traffic, not the emails, not even the people who hurt us. It is our reaction, our attachment, our identification with the story that causes pain. To transform your mind is to shine a light into these hidden places. To pause when the old narrative rises. To ask, is this true? To see your sadness not as a personal failing, but as a cloud passing through the vast sky of awareness. You are not the sadness. You are the sky. A woman once sat before a statue of the Buddha in a small village shrine. She had lost her job. Her partner had left. Her health was failing. She wept openly, letting her sorrow fall like rain. An old nun sat beside her silently, offering no comfort, no advice, only presence. After a long while, the woman asked, "Why do I suffer so much?" The nun touched her heart and whispered, "Because you believed you had to carry it alone." One of the great truths in Buddhist wisdom is interbeing. Nothing exists independently. No self exists in isolation. Your pain, your joy, your breath are not yours alone. They are part of the great flow of life, rising and falling like the tides. When you remember this, you begin to soften, you begin to forgive, you begin to protect your energy not through withdrawal but through wisdom. There is great power in simply noticing. Noticing when your body tightens. Noticing when your breath shortens. Noticing when the same thought returns like a wheel turning endlessly. In that noticing, there is a choice. The choice to continue or to stop. The choice to carry or to set down. You do not need to earn your right to peace. You do not need to prove your worth through suffering. The Buddha did not awaken because he conquered pain. He awakened because he saw it clearly and stopped resisting. He saw that craving is a fire we feed every time we believe happiness lies in the next thing. But joy, real joy, is not found in the next moment. It is found in this one, in the exhale, in the space between thoughts, in the silence beneath the noise. To find peace in chaos is not to silence the world. It is to hear the world with a quiet heart. The chaos does not disappear, but your relationship to it transforms. Like watching a storm through a window instead of being swept away by the wind. You are still. The storm moves around you. And in that stillness, you begin to see things as they are. So many of us walk through life with clenched fists, trying to hold on, trying to control, trying to be certain. But letting go does not mean losing. It means opening. It means trusting that you do not have to grasp so tightly to be safe, that you do not have to know the next step to keep walking, that you can surrender not out of defeat, but out of trust. When you feel overwhelmed, ask yourself, what am I carrying that I can put down? Maybe it's a belief that you're not enough. Maybe it's the need to fix someone else's life. Maybe it's the fear of not being loved. Whatever it is, breathe into it. Acknowledge it, and then set it down gently. Like the monk's rock. Not because it doesn't matter, but because you do. There are Buddhist reminders when you feel lost. A single breath, a single step, a single cup of tea held with mindfulness. These are not small things. They are sacred rituals of returning. Returning to yourself. Returning to the present. Returning to the truth that nothing needs to be added for you to be whole. You do not need to become better. You need only to remember. Remember the part of you that is already awake, already still, already free. A leaf falls from the tree, not in despair, but in acceptance. The sun sets each night without resistance. The river flows forward without regret. You, too, are part of this great movement. Trust it. Let go into it. And when you do, you will begin to feel the weight lift, not all at once, not forever, but enough. Enough to take one more step with ease. Enough to sit a little longer in silence. Enough to smile, not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. The Buddha's path is not a ladder to climb. It is a ground to return to, over and over, gently, patiently, kindly. Set down the weight. Sit beside the still water of your own breath, and listen. You have arrived. Part 5. When nothing is certain, everything is possible. In the quiet before dawn, when the sky is still undecided between night and light, there is a breath the world takes that goes unnoticed. It is neither still nor moving, neither holding nor letting go. It is the breath of uncertainty, of not knowing, of being suspended between what was and what may come. In the modern world, uncertainty is often treated as something to eliminate. We plan, predict, protect. We try to outrun the unknown with calendars and calculations. But in the heart of Buddhist teachings, uncertainty is not an enemy to be conquered. It is a teacher, a mirror, a gate. To live is to not know. To love is to risk. To awaken is to accept that every moment arrives without a script. No one knows how long they will live. No one knows what tomorrow will bring. No one knows which word will be the last, or which silence will hold the most truth. Yet, this very uncertainty, the Buddha taught, is not the source of our suffering. Our resistance to it is. A young man once came to a forest monastery after losing everything: his job, his partner, his sense of identity. He asked the abbot, "I don't know who I am anymore. I feel lost. I feel broken." The abbot looked at the autumn leaves falling outside and said, "Good. Now you are soft enough to be shaped by truth. In this world of permanent seeking minds, to feel lost is not failure. It is a return to the open field of being. Before we were told who to become, it is the beginning of real freedom. The moment when you no longer cling to what must be, and instead listen to what is. To transform your mind in the face of uncertainty is not to pretend it does not exist, but to sit with it, to breathe with it, to let it speak without interrupting it with solutions. In Buddhist wisdom, uncertainty is one of the 5 great contemplations, because when nothing is guaranteed, everything is revealed as precious. This breath, this sunrise, this conversation, this tear, we often ask, how do I stay calm and positive when everything is changing? The answer is not found in ignoring change, but in remembering that change is not against you, it is you. Your body is changing. Your thoughts are changing. The seasons are changing. The breath itself rises and falls without your control. The problem is not that things change. The problem is we believe they should not. In the ancient sutras, the Buddha taught, all compounded things are subject to dissolution. This is not a warning. It is a liberation. If all things change, then your pain will change. Your fear will change. Your confusion will change. Nothing that arises can remain. You are not stuck. You are simply passing through another bend in the river. To find peace in chaos, you must stop trying to freeze the river. Let it flow. Sit on its bank. Watch. There is a place within you that does not move. The witnessing mind. The clear seeing. the sky in which clouds appear and disappear. That place is never uncertain. It knows that everything comes and goes, even the fear of not knowing. In a quiet village, where the mountains held the clouds like secrets, a woman once asked a nun, "How do you live with not knowing what comes next?" The nun replied, "I water my plants. I bow to the morning. I say thank you at night. I let the day reveal itself without needing to control its shape." This is Buddhism for beginners, but it is also the path of the masters, the wisdom to let go of needing certainty and instead cultivate presence. You do not need to know the end of the story to walk the next step. You do not need to have the answer to take the next breath. The Dharma is not about securing guarantees. It is about meeting life as it is, with open hands, an open heart, and a mind not trapped in the grip of needing to be sure. When the world feels uncertain, protect your energy by turning inward, not to retreat, but to recharge. Sit in stillness. Listen. What part of you is demanding answers? What fear is whispering about control? When you sit long enough, the noise begins to soften, and in that quiet, a deeper knowing emerges. Not the kind of knowing that says, "This will happen," but the kind that says, "Whatever happens, I can meet it with clarity." You are not fragile. You are fluid. You are not lost. You are being reoriented. You are not broken. You are being rearranged. Uncertainty brings us to the edge of ourselves, and then invites us to grow beyond what we thought possible. When the old maps burn, the stars become visible again. There are Buddhist reminders when you feel lost. You are not alone. Others have walked this path. The Buddha himself sat under the Bodhi tree not to escape uncertainty, but to sit in the middle of it until it revealed its nature. What he found was not control. He found liberation from needing it. When you feel that the ground beneath you is shifting, take refuge in what does not shift the breath, the present moment, the awareness that sees without clinging. These are your anchors. These are your home. To live without fear is not to live without danger. It is to no longer be ruled by the mind that demands guarantees. It is to walk through the fog with steady steps, trusting that the path will unfold under your feet. In the great silence of the heart, there is room for the unknown. There is room for sorrow, for joy, for confusion, for beauty. The spiritual path is not linear. It spirals. It loops. It pauses. But always, it leads you back to now. And now is the only place where real transformation occurs. If your life feels uncertain today, if your heart feels unsure, if your mind is spinning with questions, stop. Breathe. Place a hand over your chest. Feel the warmth there. This is where life is. Not in the imagined future. Not in the rehearsed past. Here. In this touch. In this breath. In this uncertain, unrepeatable moment. And here, everything is possible. If these words have offered you comfort, clarity, or simply space to breathe, we welcome you to join this journey by subscribing to Daily Dharma Listening. Like, share, or carry this message in your heart. The path continues, not with answers, but with presence. Let us walk it together. Part 6. The sound of the bell is already inside you. There is a sound that travels further than any spoken word. It is not heard with the ears, but with the soul. It is the sound that lives in the space before thought, in the hush between two heartbeats, in the stillness you feel just after the wind passes. In the monasteries of the East, this sound is often echoed by a single bell, rung slowly, deeply, until the vibration hums through the bones of the earth. But the true bell, the ancient masters say, does not hang from the rafters of a temple. It dwells within your own awareness. And when you listen, deeply and without distraction, you will hear it calling you back to yourself. The sound of the bell is not a command. It is a reminder, a gentle return, to remember what you have forgotten, not through effort but through presence. In Buddhist teachings, this kind of remembering is not of the past, it is of your original mind. The mind before noise, before labels, before roles. That mind is not lost. It is only covered, like the moon hidden by drifting clouds. In your daily life, the bell takes many forms. The sting of an unexpected word, the sudden pause in conversation, the ache in your chest before sleep. These are not interruptions. They are invitations. They ask you to stop, to look inward, to recognize the habits that carry you away. Often, we wait for peace to come from outside, a break from work, a kind gesture, a quiet place. But the teachings are clear. The bell is already inside you. It rings when you stop running. It sounds when you become still. Imagine for a moment walking down a busy street. The world is moving fast horns, footsteps, flashing signs. But in the middle of it all, you pause. You take a breath, conscious and deep. That is the sound of the bell. Not audible, but awakening. A moment of remembering amid the forgetting. That is the essence of how to stay calm and positive. Not by controlling your environment, but by mastering your attention. The bell reminds you that every moment is complete, that you do not have to get somewhere else to find peace, that the present, when truly inhabited, is enough. But to hear the bell, you must become quiet. And quietness is not the absence of sound. It is the absence of resistance. The mind wants to grasp, fix, analyze. But the bell asks you to let go, to surrender into listening, not as a task, but as a sacred act of being. A Zen teacher once asked a student, "Do you hear the stream?" The student nodded. "Then enter Zen from there." The master said, "The sound of water, the hum of traffic, the breath moving through your nostrils. Any of these can be your gate, if you truly listen." The problem is not that the bell is not ringing. It is that we are not here to hear it. The bell is always present. But are you? To protect your energy is to remember the bell. When the world overwhelms, when emotions surge, when thoughts become storms, return to the soundless sound within. That is where your strength lives. That is where clarity arises. Not through reaction, but through recognition. Even in suffering, the bell can ring. Especially in suffering, pain has a way of forcing us into presence. It strips away illusion. It demands honesty. But if we listen, not to the story of the pain, but to the experience itself, we begin to touch something sacred. The pain becomes a teacher. The suffering becomes a sound that brings us back to the present. This is the practice. This is the path. To stop seeking a life without difficulty and instead become a person who listens deeply to life as it is. Buddhist wisdom teaches us not to fear emotion, but to make space for it. Not to silence the grief, but to hold it gently. Not to avoid anger, but to witness its fire with compassion. All of these are bells, each calling us to awaken from the trance of ego, from the false belief that peace lies in perfection. There was once a laywoman who came to a monastery every morning before dawn to sit in the courtyard. She did not speak. She did not seek advice. She simply sat. When asked why, she said, The world is loud, but here, I remember the sound of silence, and that silence reminds me who I am. You do not need a monastery. You need only your breath. You need only this moment, right where you are. The kitchen, the train, the sidewalk, the ache, the joy, each one is an opportunity to hear the bell, to find peace in chaos. Stop waiting for the chaos to disappear. Let it dance. Let it spin. Let it shout. But do not join it. Become the still point around which it turns. That is the power of awareness. That is the strength of inner listening. So often we ask, what should I do next? But the real question is, am I present now? When presence returns, decisions clarify. When listening deepens, action aligns. When the bell rings, we return not just to the moment, but to ourselves. You may be searching for direction. You may feel scattered, uncertain, tired. But within you is a sound older than your name, older than your worries. It is the bell of the Dharma, calling you back to your seat, to your breath, to the unfolding miracle of now. To live without fear is not to eliminate all danger, but to develop the courage to be fully here, not in the future, where fear imagines everything wrong, not in the past, where regret chains the soul, but here, with what is true. Close your eyes now, even if only for a few seconds. Breathe in, breathe out. Listen, not with your ears, but with your awareness. Somewhere beneath the chatter of the mind, beneath the noise of the world, the bell is sounding. It is not loud, it is not urgent, but it is constant. It is the sound of your being. It is the song of the awakened heart. You do not have to chase it. You do not have to deserve it. You only have to stop and listen. The bell is already inside you, and it has been waiting for you to hear it. Part 7. Beneath the storm. The roots are still. There are days when the sky seems to collapse upon itself, when clouds gather like clenched fists, and the air thickens with the weight of what has not yet fallen. The storm comes, not only outside, but within. And it does not ask permission. It arrives as grief, as fear, as a restless mind spinning itself into exhaustion. It crashes into our carefully held plans, our delicate hopes, our stories of how things should be, and in the middle of it all, we feel small, scattered, fragile. But beneath the storm, the roots are still. Beneath the turmoil of thoughts and emotions, there is a stillness that does not break. It is quiet. It is strong, and it is always there. In the forest, when the wind howls and trees sway violently, the roots hold firm. They do not panic. They do not resist. They remain, unseen and steady. So too, in Buddhist teachings, we are reminded that our practice is not measured by how calm life appears, but by how deeply rooted we remain when everything shakes. To transform your mind is not to stop storms from coming. It is to remember your roots, the breath, the body, the moment. This is where the Dharma lives, not in distant temples, but in the ground beneath your feet. When the mind screams, when the heart races, when the world feels like too much, the ancient teachings offer no magic, no sudden escape. They offer presence. They offer the next breath. The Buddha did not teach us how to escape the world. He taught us how to live in it with eyes open, heart open, hands unclenched. He taught that suffering arises not from the storm itself, but from our resistance to it, our craving for permanence, our clinging to control, our fear of change. But when we let go of that resistance, even for a moment, we fall into a deeper awareness, an awareness that watches the storm without becoming it, that feels the wind but does not lose balance, that hears the thunder but remains unmoved. A traveler once sought refuge in a small hut during a monsoon. Inside, an old monk sat sipping tea, his robes damp, his expression calm. The traveler, drenched and shaking, exclaimed, "How can you sit so peacefully while the storm rages?" The monk replied, "Because I do not rage with it. To find peace in chaos is not to change the chaos. It is to change our relationship with it. When the mind believes, it must fix, manage, or outrun every difficulty, it becomes exhausted. But when the mind is trained to observe, to accept, to release, then peace arises naturally, like a lotus blooming from the mud. This is not passive resignation. It is courageous surrender. It is the understanding that everything, even the storm, belongs. Sometimes we forget that our roots are not found in what we own, or who approves of us, or how productive we are. Our roots are found in silence, in the discipline of returning, in the humility of not knowing. When you feel overwhelmed, ask not, "How do I escape this?" but "Where are my roots?" Place a hand on your chest. Feel the breath. Sit with what is. Let the storm rage, but do not mistake it for who you are. Buddhist wisdom tells us that all phenomena are impermanent. The storm will pass. The pain will soften. The confusion will clear. What remains is the awareness that watched it all. That awareness is not shaken. It is not anxious. It is not afraid. It is simply present. In a mountain village, a woman lost her home to a landslide. Her belongings gone. Her family scattered. Her future uncertain. And yet, when a monk visited her days later, she was tending to a small garden beside the ruin. "Why do you plant now?" he asked. She looked up and said, "Because my hands still remember how. Because the ground is still here." This is the lesson. Even when everything seems lost, there is always something to return to. A breath, a gesture, a moment of stillness. The roots are not gone. You have not failed. You are not broken. You are simply learning how to remember again. To protect your energy is to stop pouring it into what you cannot control. It is to stop fighting the storm and instead focus on the ground beneath you. What nourishes you? What brings you back? Sometimes it is a single mindful inhale. Sometimes it is a kind word. Sometimes it is the willingness to do nothing at all but feel. The modern world asks you to move fast, decide quickly, produce endlessly. But the Dharma asks something else. It asks you to slow down, to feel fully, to trust that nothing is wasted, not even the moments that hurt. Because those moments teach you where your roots are. They remind you of the strength you forgot you had. They show you how to live without fear. Not because you never tremble, but because you know the trembling will pass. Because you've been through storms before, and you are still here. Let yourself be like the tree swaying if you must, but grounded. Let yourself fall, if needed, into the earth of the present. There is no shame in needing rest. There is no weakness in uncertainty. The deepest truths are not found in clarity, but in surrender. In the willingness to sit in the rain and wait for the sky to clear. There are Buddhist reminders when you feel lost. The bell that calls you back to the moment. The silence that wraps itself around you when words cannot help. The gaze of compassion you offer to yourself, even when you feel unworthy. These are your roots. They do not fail you. You only forget them. But forgetting is not the end. It is the invitation to remember again, to begin again, to breathe again. The storm will pass, but the roots will remain. Return to them. They have been waiting. Part 8. The space where nothing is missing. There is a kind of silence that does not come from absence, but from fullness. It is not the silence of empty rooms or forgotten paths. It is the silence of deep presence, of a mind at rest, of a heart no longer searching. This silence is not quiet because there is nothing there. It is quiet because nothing is missing. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from the illusion of lack, from the belief that this moment, this self, this life, is somehow not enough. And so we reach, we chase, we compare. We build our days on the foundation of more achievement, more certainty, more love, more answers. But the Dharma speaks softly through it all. Stop running. Stop grasping. Look closely. What you seek is already here, waiting in the space you overlook. A student once asked a master, "What must I do to become enlightened?" The master replied, "Nothing." The student protested, "But surely there is a path, a practice, a discipline." The master smiled. "All of that is to help you see what has always been true. The moon was never missing. You were only looking in the wrong direction." We live in a culture that conditions us to look outward. We measure ourselves against others, against ideals, against time. We think happiness lies just beyond the next goal. But the teachings remind us again and again, freedom is not somewhere else. Peace is not something added. It is what remains when we stop removing ourselves from the present, when we stop arguing with what is, when we stop believing the mind's endless whisper that something is wrong, something is lacking, something must be fixed. To transform your mind is to begin to question this whisper, not to fight it, but to see through it. Who would you be without the story that says you're not enough? What would this moment feel like if you weren't trying to improve it? This does not mean we become passive. It means we learn to move from wholeness, not from deficiency. We act not to earn peace, but to express it. We speak not to be seen, but to share our seeing. There is a Tibetan teaching that says, "Everything you see has its roots in the unseen." The anxiety you feel may come from forgetting this space of fullness within. The tension in your chest may be the result of always reaching, never arriving. But the path of Buddhist wisdom is not to escape this reaching. It is to gently return. Return to the space where breath moves without effort, where thoughts pass like clouds, where nothing has to be different for you to be whole. To find peace in chaos is to discover that chaos is not the opposite of peace. It is simply motion. But you are not motion. You are the stillness in which motion moves. You are not the thoughts. You are the space between them. You are not the roles, the plans, the problems. You are the awareness that receives them all. In a quiet monastery, an old monk tended to the same patch of garden each day. He watered the plants, removed weeds, and sat among the flowers without speaking. One day, a visitor asked, "Do you ever wish for a larger temple? More students? Greater teachings?" The monk replied, "If I cannot find contentment here, where else would I find it?" This is the invitation of the Dharma, not to add more, but to see more clearly, not to become someone else, but to recognize the illusion of the self you think you must be. When we believe something is missing, we create restlessness. When we see that nothing is missing, we create stillness. To protect your energy, is to stop pouring it into the idea that this moment is insufficient. It is to reclaim your attention from the stories of lack. It is to recognize the sacred in the simple, the breath, the body, the silence between words. Modern life bombards us with messages that you need to be more, do more, know more. But Buddhist teachings offer a radical truth. You are already whole. Wholeness is not something you earn. It is something you remember. When you feel lost, ask yourself, not, what must I do to fix this? But what am I overlooking right now? Perhaps it is the softness of your breath, the warmth in your hands, the stillness behind the noise. These are Buddhist reminders when you feel lost, not to tell you where to go, but to remind you that you have never left. In the space where nothing is missing, you can rest. Not because everything is resolved, not because the world has become easy, but because you have stopped arguing with the present. You have stopped believing the voice that says you must always be becoming. You are here, and here is enough. This is not a philosophy. It is a practice, a moment-to-moment remembering, a gentle return, again and again. Close your eyes. Breathe in. Breathe out. Let the noise fall away. Let the reaching rest. Listen to the silence, not as emptiness, but as presence. Notice how nothing is needed. Not right now. Not in this breath. This is the space the Buddha pointed to, not as a goal, but as a reality already here. Let yourself soften into it. Let the tension unravel. Let the need to be more dissolve. You are not incomplete. You are not behind. You are not late. You are simply here. And here, nothing is missing. Part 9. The gentle art of beginning again. Some mornings arrive without warning, not the ones marked by alarm clocks or obligations, but those quiet, trembling dawns inside the heart when something finally releases, when the weight of trying crumbles into the softness of simply being. These are not the beginnings we plan. They are the beginnings that find us when we are too tired to hold ourselves together any longer. In the Buddhist path, beginning again is not a matter of shame or defeat. It is the way itself, over and over, without drama, without judgment, without punishment. The path begins wherever you remember to return. A monk once said, "Falling off the path is not the problem. The problem is forgetting that the path is always under your feet." In this life, you will forget. You will react instead of respond. You will worry instead of trust. You will cling when you should release. And you will wander far from your center. But none of these are failure. They are reminders. And in that reminder is the door that opens again, always again. To transform your mind is to learn the art of the return. The body returning to breath. The attention returning to now. The heart returning to presence after a storm of thought. Each time you come back to awareness, no matter how far you've strayed, you are beginning again, not as someone broken seeking to become whole, but as someone whole remembering what they truly are. The mind tells stories of inadequacy, of shame, of being too late. But the Dharma sees clearly, there is no such thing as being late to the present moment. You arrive exactly when you arrive. The breath welcomes you, whether it's the first of the day or the 1,000th you've missed. There is no scoreboard in the practice, only this moment, and this one, and this one. In Buddhist teachings, even the Buddha himself was a beginner once. Before the Bodhi tree, he wandered, he searched, he tried many paths, and each path taught him something, even in its incompletion. It was not the perfection of the path that awakened him. It was the presence with which he walked it. In a forest monastery, a novice struggled with his discipline. One evening, he approached his teacher and confessed, "Every day I vow to sit in silence, and every day I break that vow." The teacher nodded and said, "Then sit again tomorrow. Not because you kept the vow, but because you're still alive to renew it." This is the heart of Buddhist wisdom. The vow is not to be perfect. The vow is to be present, and presence does not depend on your past. It is available in the single, fragile, magnificent breath you are taking right now. To find peace in chaos is to stop trying to clean up the whole world before you sit down. Begin with one breath. Begin with one act of noticing. You don't have to make everything calm. You have to remember that calmness is a direction, not a condition. Some days, the mind is a windstorm. Some days, it is a pond. Either way, your task is the same: to sit, to breathe, to begin. To protect your energy is to stop wounding yourself for not being where you think you should be. You are exactly where the teachings meet you. The teachings are not for the version of you that gets everything right. They are for the you who keeps forgetting and still returns. They are for the tired you, the doubtful you, the hurting you, the you who still gets up and makes tea and listens for silence beneath the noise. Every breath is a doorway. Every pause is a chance to remember. Every time you choose to listen instead of react, to breathe instead of lash out, to soften instead of harden, you are beginning again. And that is the practice. That is the liberation. There are Buddhist reminders when you feel lost. And this is one of the most gentle. The path is not made of milestones. It is made of moments. Begin again in this one. Let go of what you thought should have happened. Let go of how much you think you failed. Return to the simplicity of now. A woman once sat with a monk and said, "I have wasted years. I don't know how to come back to my path." The monk touched the ground and said, "You never left. The path is not a place. It is the way you walk. Walk gently, and you are already home. To live without fear is not to never stumble. It is to stop fearing the stumble. It is to know that even when you fall, the earth is still there to catch you. The breath still enters. The sun still rises. The Dharma does not abandon those who forget. It walks beside you, patient and unjudging, until you remember to listen again. This is not a journey of grand awakenings. It is a journey of 1,000 quiet beginnings, 1,000 small choices, 1,000 soft returns. You may have spoken in anger. Begin again. You may have closed your heart in fear. Begin again. You may have given up your practice, your discipline, your silence. Begin again. The path does not keep score. It only waits, open and wide as the sky. And so today, if your heart feels heavy, if your mind is clouded, if your soul is tired, pause. Breathe. Feel the ground beneath you. Let yourself return, not as a penance, but as a kindness. Begin again, and again, and again. Part 10. The wisdom of doing nothing. In a world addicted to urgency, silence is mistaken for laziness. Stillness is misread as failure, and the simple act of doing nothing is often burdened with guilt. But deep within the ancient teachings of the Buddha lies a secret rhythm, one that moves not through speed, but through stillness. Not through ambition, but through awareness. This rhythm cannot be rushed. It does not arrive in haste. It unfolds like a lotus opening beneath the morning light, with no audience, no announcement, just being, just breath, In the heart of this rhythm is a truth long forgotten by the restless, that sometimes the most powerful act is no act at all, that there is great courage in resting, in waiting, in being present without performing. This is not apathy. This is not passivity. This is the sacred art of doing nothing and letting everything be exactly as it is. The Buddha himself sat beneath the Bodhi tree and vowed not to rise until he saw through the illusions that bound him. He did not fight. He did not flee. He did not plan or persuade. He sat. He breathed. He watched. And through the simplicity of that stillness, the universe opened. To transform your mind is to become still enough to hear it, to stop interrupting your own clarity with effort, to cease the endless, becoming long enough to remember what already is. The mind is like a stirred pool, muddy, chaotic, restless. But if left untouched, the sediment settles and clarity returns. So too, in the practice of doing nothing, we create the conditions for insight, not by adding more, but by subtracting noise. In Buddhist teachings, non-doing is not a lack of response, it is the highest response. It is the place from which true action emerges, not as reaction, not as strategy, but as harmony with what is needed. Like a tree that does not try to grow, like the moon that does not try to shine. There is a natural unfolding when we stop forcing and start trusting. A young monk once asked his teacher, "What is the most advanced practice?" The teacher closed his eyes, placed his hands on his lap, and sat silently. After a long time, he opened his eyes and said, "That." The monk looked confused. The teacher smiled. "Until you are able to sit and do nothing without restlessness, you will not hear the Dharma. Because the Dharma is not in the doing, it is in the being. In the spaces where we resist doing nothing, we often discover our deepest fears. The fear of irrelevance, the fear of being forgotten, the fear that we are only valuable if we are producing, achieving, fixing. But Buddhist wisdom reminds us that you are not here to prove your worth. You are here to remember it. To find peace in chaos is not to fight the noise, but to create a still point within it. Even the hurricane has an eye, a place of silence while the winds rage. You are that eye, that center, that place where stillness watches the storm, not with resistance, but with compassion. Doing nothing is not the absence of engagement. It is the presence of full awareness. It is sitting on your porch and watching the evening light fade without needing it to mean anything. It is standing under the rain without needing to run. It is allowing grief to move through you without trying to name it or fix it. In a small village, there was a woman who lost everything in a fire. Her neighbors brought her food, offered her advice, tried to console her, but she sat quietly by the ashes for 3 days. When asked why, she said, "Because the silence teaches me what words cannot." This is the power of stillness. It teaches, not with content, but with contact, with presence, with truth. To protect your energy is to allow yourself rest, to resist the pressure of constant output, to trust that the world does not fall apart when you pause. In fact, the world often begins to heal when we do. Your nervous system finds balance. Your mind finds perspective. Your soul finds space to breathe. There are Buddhist reminders when you feel lost. And one of the most overlooked is this: stop, sit, do nothing, not forever, just for now. Let the mind slow. Let the breath deepen. Let the heart speak. You may believe you are falling behind, but there is no race. The present is not waiting for you to catch up. It is only waiting for you to arrive. and arrival requires stillness. To live without fear is to no longer be afraid of silence, to no longer flee the emptiness inside. The emptiness is not a void, it is a vessel. It is the womb of wisdom. And when you stop filling it with distractions, it begins to speak. Doing nothing is not easy. It strips you bare. It reveals all the ways you avoid yourself. But in that revealing, there is freedom, because you see that you are not the restlessness. You are the space in which it dances. You are not the thought. You are the silence beneath it. You are not the problem. You are the presence that holds the problem without needing to solve it. A disciple once asked, "When will I reach enlightenment?" The master answered, "When you stop trying so hard to reach it." The most subtle attachment is to awakening itself, but the truth is quiet. The truth does not need to be attained. It only needs to be seen, and seeing requires stillness. So today, do nothing, not as avoidance, but as return, not as withdrawal, but as arrival, not because you've given up, but because you're finally willing to be here. Sit, breathe, listen. Let the stillness do its work. You do not need to improve this moment. You only need to inhabit it. And in doing so, everything begins to shift, not because you moved, but because you stopped. Because in the end, the greatest change often begins where doing ends. And in that space, everything returns to what it is. Whole, silent, enough. If this moment of stillness has nourished you, we invite you to subscribe to Daily Dharma Listening, where words point gently towards silence, and silence reveals everything. Like, share, and carry this space with you into your day. You don't need to do more. You only need to be. Part 11. Drinking tea with your shadow. There is a quiet corner of the mind where the parts we hide go to wait. The anger we suppress. The fear we silence. The memories we bury beneath the noise of daily life all gather there like forgotten guests in a house we pretend is clean. In the bright light of our intentions, we speak of peace, of mindfulness, of letting go. But in the shadow, something older remains aching to be seen, not corrected, felt, not fixed. Buddhist teachings do not ignore this place. They walk straight into it with a candle of compassion in one hand and a cup of tea in the other, inviting even the most wounded parts of ourselves to sit down and breathe. To transform your mind is not to eliminate the shadow. It is to become intimate with it. To stop fearing your own depth. To stop pushing away what hurts. The lotus, after all, blooms from the mud. It does not pretend the mud isn't there. It grows through it. It embraces the darkness beneath the water. And because of that, it reaches the light. There is a teaching in Zen, when the mind is without walls, the whole world fits inside. What are your walls made of? Old guilt, unspoken pain, the fear of being seen too clearly. These walls keep the shadow out, but they also keep life out. They keep truth out. They keep love just beyond reach. But when you sit quietly and breathe into the places you've avoided, the walls begin to soften. The breath becomes a bridge. And soon, you're not divided anymore. To find peace in chaos is not to tidy up every emotion. It is to become so present with your own mess that it no longer threatens you. A storm only frightens the house with a weak foundation. But if you sit, solid as a mountain, the storm may shake your walls, but it will not collapse your center. Imagine this: you are sitting across from your fear, not as an enemy but as a visitor. You pour it tea. You ask where it came from. You listen. You do not try to change it. You do not explain it away. You do not fight. This is what it means to drink tea with your shadow. This is not self-indulgence. This is self-knowing. This is the first step toward true peace. In Buddhist wisdom, awareness is not limited to what is pleasant. True awareness embraces the totality of being. The shame, the rage, the confusion, the joy, the silence. When we turn toward these states with mindfulness, they begin to unravel. Not because we force them to, but because we are no longer feeding them with resistance. A man once came to a forest monastery, overwhelmed by regret. He told the teacher he had done terrible things and could not forgive himself. The teacher looked at him for a long time and said, "So stop trying to forgive. Just sit beside your regret until it tells you what it needs." The man stayed for months. He did not talk much. He just sat. And over time, his regret softened, not because it vanished, but because he stopped refusing to feel it. He stopped abandoning himself. To protect your energy is not only to avoid toxic people, it is to stop waging war against your own heart. It is to let go of the exhausting project of perfection. It is to stop being afraid of the parts of you that still hurt. The mind wants to solve the pain. The soul wants to witness it. And witnessing is enough. Sit with your doubt. Sit with your envy. Sit with your confusion. Do not judge. Do not interpret. Do not fix. Just sit. The breath will hold you. The earth beneath your body will support you. The Dharma does not abandon those who are in darkness. In fact, it was made for them. There are Buddhist reminders when you feel lost. And one of the most sacred is this: your shadow is not your flaw. It is your unopened gift. It is the doorway to the depth you seek. When you stop turning away from yourself, you stop running. And when you stop running, you begin to rest. Not just on the outside, but deep within. To live without fear is not to be untouched by darkness. It is to walk into it with a candle. It is to know that even the heaviest sorrow can be held with tenderness. It is to trust that no part of you is too broken to belong. The Buddha did not only teach the path of light. He taught the middle way, where light and shadow bow to each other, where joy and sorrow hold hands, where the whole of life is welcomed. In a small temple, a statue of the Buddha sits with one hand touching the earth. It is the gesture of grounding, of calling the earth to witness the truth of awakening. But it is also a gesture of inclusion. It says, "I am here, with all of it, with every breath, with every wound, with every moment I could not control. And still, I bow." This is your path, not to become better, but to become whole. Not to remove the shadow, but to bring it into the light of loving awareness. Not to silence the pain, but to hear what it has been trying to say for years. So tonight, or this morning, or whenever the quiet finds you, sit down, make a cup of tea, invite your sadness, invite your old stories, invite the version of you who still doubts. Say to them, "Come, you don't need to hide anymore." And then just sit and breathe and listen. That is enough. That is everything. Part 12. When the breath becomes your teacher. There is a wisdom that does not speak in words, that does not argue or persuade, that does not rise and fall with the shifting winds of thought. It is steady. It is ancient. And it lives in your body, flowing through you like an invisible river, the breath. Long before you knew its name, it carried you. Long before you knew how to listen, it was teaching you. But only in stillness, only in presence, does it begin to reveal its secrets. And once you learn to listen, truly listen, the breath becomes more than air. It becomes a teacher, a mirror, a path. In Buddhist teachings, the breath is not a tool to be controlled, but a gateway to be entered. When you follow it without force, without judgment, without expectation, it leads you home, not to a place, but to presence itself. This moment, this inhale, this exhale, that is where the Buddha waited for you all along. To transform your mind is not to fill it with teachings. It is to return it to simplicity. And there is nothing more simple, more profound, more honest than the breath. It cannot lie. It does not pretend. It is always in the now. You cannot breathe yesterday. You cannot breathe tomorrow. You can only breathe now. So when you place your attention gently on the breath, you are not merely practicing mindfulness. You are entering into direct relationship with the reality that nothing else matters more than this very life unfolding. Breath by breath. The breath holds the rhythm of impermanence. It rises. It falls. It appears. It disappears. And yet it returns. Softly. Faithfully. Like the Dharma itself. Even when you forget. Even when you are lost in distraction. The breath does not leave you. It waits. Patiently. Silently. Until you return. Until you remember. Until you listen again. In a remote mountain monastery, an old teacher once told a wandering seeker, "If you wish to know your mind, follow your breath for 1,000 mornings." The seeker laughed, expecting metaphors, rituals, secrets. But the teacher simply closed his eyes and followed his breath. One, then another, and the room became still. Not because the world had changed, but because someone had remembered how to be present within it. To find peace in chaos is not to control the breath, but to feel it. To become so intimate with its texture, its temperature, its flow, that you begin to feel the storm moving through you instead of against you. The breath is your anchor when everything shifts. When fear grips your chest, when confusion clouds your vision, when words fail, the breath remains. It reminds you, you are still here. You are still alive. And as long as the breath is moving, there is hope. There is space. There is choice. Your breath has carried your laughter and your grief. It has held your silence and your sorrow. It knows you more deeply than your thoughts ever could. It does not care if you are holy or wounded, disciplined or distracted. It will meet you exactly where you are, and it will guide you, gently, to where you need to be, not forward or backward, but deeper. To protect your energy is to protect your breath, to stop giving it away to worry, to tension, to the endless pursuit of proving something. When you breathe with awareness, you return to sovereignty. You stop reacting and start witnessing. You stop collapsing and start softening. You reclaim the sacred ground of your own being. In Buddhist wisdom, the breath is often compared to a thread that connects the body to the mind. When the breath is shallow, the mind is restless. When the breath is deep, the mind begins to settle. So we do not control the breath. We observe it. We accompany it like a friend. And in that companionship, the mind learns to rest. The body remembers how to release. And the heart opens like a flower touched by sunlight. There are Buddhist reminders when you feel lost. And perhaps the most faithful one is the breath itself. You do not need to chant. You do not need to escape. You need only to pause and ask, "Where is my breath?" And in that question, A door opens. The breath says, "I am here. Come sit with me." We don't have to fix anything. We don't have to know the future. We can just breathe together. To live without fear is to return to the breath again and again, especially when fear comes. Not to banish it, not to fight it, but to hold it like you hold the breath, gently, patiently, without judgment. When you are with the breath, you are no longer inside the story. You are inside the moment. And in the moment, fear is not as large as it seemed. It shrinks under the gaze of awareness. It softens under the light of presence. There was once a woman who sat each morning beside her window, simply watching her breath. Her neighbors thought she was strange, even lazy. But she never defended herself. She only smiled. Years later, after a great loss, she said, "I have cried with the breath. I have healed with the breath. I have remembered who I am with the breath. I do not need to explain. The breath is not a means to an end. It is the end itself. It is the practice. It is the teacher. It is the teaching. And it asks for nothing but your attention. Sit now. Breathe slowly. Feel the breath enter, not just your lungs, but your life. Let it wash away what is no longer needed. Let it remind you that you are already complete, that nothing more is required. That in this breath, and this one, and this one, you are home. And in that home, there is no fear, only stillness, only peace, only breath. Part 13. The breath you end with is the breath you begin again. Somewhere between the final exhale of the day and the first fragile light of dawn, there is a breath you do not notice, a breath that does not carry ambition, does not worry, does not ask for more. It is neither proud nor ashamed. It simply arrives, soft and unnoticed, like mist settling over the earth. This breath does not care if you meditated today, if your thoughts were pure, if your actions were flawless. It comes anyway. It carries your life anyway. And in that quiet generosity lies the most profound of Buddhist truths. The path is not something you earn. It is something you are already walking, breath by breath. Whether you know it or not, the final breath of this moment is also the beginning of the next. This is not poetry. It is the very fabric of impermanence. No breath repeats itself. No breath lingers. Each one comes. Each one goes. And the space it leaves behind is sacred. In Buddhist teachings, death is not the end. It is the deepest mirror. It shows us what truly matters. It strips away pretense. It invites us into presence, not out of fear, but out of truth. Because when you understand that everything passes, you begin to treasure the things you once ignored. A gaze, a smile, a single cup of tea with both hands. You stop waiting for peace to arrive in the future. You stop postponing your life. You breathe into now, and now becomes enough. To transform your mind at the deepest level is to recognize that you are not your plans. You are not your mistakes. You are not your accomplishments. You are this breath, this awareness, this single heartbeat inside an infinite silence. All else passes through, but this is constant. When you come home to it, you are no longer at war with the world. There is a story told of a monk who, sensing his time of death approaching, sat in meditation and smiled. A younger disciple asked, "Master, are you not afraid?" The monk opened his eyes and said, "I have taken countless breaths in this life. Some came in pain, some in joy, but each one brought me home. Why should the last be any different? To find peace in chaos is to trust in this rhythm. The breath does not fight. It flows. It moves through tightness and releases it. It enters your grief and softens it. It rests in your silence and makes it whole. No matter what you face, loss, confusion, anxiety, the breath remains with you, not as an escape, but as a companion. It does not ask you to be strong. It only asks you to stay. You may forget. The world will tempt you to. It will fill your mind with reasons to hurry, to compete, to fear. But there is always this moment, waiting like a quiet temple in the middle of the noise. The door is always open, and the path is always underfoot. To protect your energy is to return, not just occasionally, but often, as a ritual, as a remembrance, as an act of devotion to your own aliveness. It is to stop giving your power away to things that cannot feed you. It is to step back into the breath as into a sacred river, letting it cleanse your fatigue, your restlessness, your need to be elsewhere. And there are Buddhist reminders when you feel lost. The way a candle flickers in a dark room, the hush between thoughts, the body remembering how to soften, the breath still moving through you, even when everything else has stopped. These are not coincidences. These are teachings. These are invitations to return. To live without fear is to make peace with not knowing. It is to understand that even if you cannot see the whole path, you can take one step. You can breathe one breath. You can meet yourself here. Again. There is a dignity in doing that. A quiet nobility in simply beginning again. So if this is the end of a long day, let your breath carry away what no longer serves you. If this is the beginning of something new, let your breath guide you into it with steadiness and grace. You do not have to know the outcome. You do not have to control the process. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are only breathing. And that is enough. The breath you end with is the breath you begin again, and again, and again.